Draftsman's Contract, which we opened with, I felt was almost an inevitable opening, because it's, in a sense, the film where most people would hear your music really for the first time and recognise it as the Michael Nyman sound. And I guess one of the things that's always occurred to me about why your music went so well with Greenaway's films of this period, which I thought was a reasonably original idea, but I then discovered a few hours ago, reading a book that someone else has already said it, was that...
You could have said it first.
Was that, in a way, the same way that Peter Greenaway was sort of playing around with art history, or the history of art in his films, and recreating images and using them in sort of ironic and strange ways, you've also done that in a sense with the history of music. I mean, you've been reinventing and playing with past music, haven't you?
That's true, and there was a piece of music I wrote when I started composing again in '77, called In Re Don Giovanni, which took some bars of the catalogue song from Don Giovanni that we regularly played in the National Theatre foyer. And amongst my audience, obviously, was Peter, and I think he was very intrigued by this piece. And in one of the appendices of the script of the Draftsman's Contract, there's a kind of a note to himself or to the BFI or whatever, saying, you know, Michael Nyman's obviously discovered a way of you know, having one foot in the 18th century and one foot in the 20th century, and that he acknowledged was a kind of starting point for the Draftsman's Contract.
Because you say you started again becoming a composer, because there was a period when you were in effect a musicologist and a journalist even.
I was a musicologist even. I mean, not really a musicologist. It sounds impressive, but I wasn't really. I was a would-be musicologist, a failed musicologist. Maybe all musicologists should be failed musicologists. No, I didn't get very far. No, I was a music critic for 10 years, from 68 to 78, and it was a great training for me as a kind of listener and kind of observer of musical culture. And I think it was possibly the best time to have been a music critic. I would hate to be a music critic now, because you'd have to write about me, but they don't. But they don't, so it doesn't really...
But I suspect this period of, as you say, perhaps failed, whatever, musicology, presumably is what gave you a grounding to compose music like we've just heard in the Draftsman.
No, in fact, the curious thing was that the brief period when I was a musicologist and when I was studying with Thurston Dart at King's College London, and he was training me to be a scholarly editor more than a musicologist. And so I found myself amongst kind of Purcell archives and the complete edition of Purcell, etc., etc. And so I had these in the space, so between 1966 and 1982, between being a musicologist and the composer of the Draftsman's Contract, you know, I was working with the same raw materials, you know, once as an editor, trying to establish, you know, scholarly text, everything correct, you know, the letter rather than the spirit of the music, and then going back to those same archives in 1982, you know, not having a care about what the letter of the music was, being more concerned about the spirit, and, you know, instead of trying to put things into context, you know, taking them out of context and ripping them apart. So that was kind of odd. So in a way, whether, had I not been a musicologist, I would still have known where to look for those Purcell originals for the Draftsman's Contract. I honestly don't know. So there was a purpose to being a musicologist. In brackets, failed.
In the, I've still got this rather large box set of the 4 soundtracks, prior to Prospero's books, that is, of the Greenaway films, and in a note that he writes at the end, he talks about finding a sort of obvious analogy between the sort of editing of film and the idea that every film is, you know, in frames, and therefore there's a certain formal quality to it, and time, rhythm tends to be dictated by that. And the music you were composing, I mean, is that something else that you felt about that brought you into film, writing for film?
I suppose, because I was really into what we called systems music over here, which was a kind of English branch of minimalism. It was very much to do with repetition. It was very much to do with finding little objects and reproducing them, and series and serialism in the kind of best sense of the word, musically. And that was very, I mean, in a way, Peter and I came together through an interest in lists, I suppose. Not Ferenc Liszt.
Not train spotting.
No. Well, train spotting came into it, but that's something else. And just this idea of variations within a category, and obviously he could categorize things according to, he looked at the world, and all I looked at was kind of, say, harmonic categories, or categories of cadences or whatever. So my view was always on rather detailed kind of musical procedures, and he had the world, and I was kind of a bit jealous of that, really.
Yeah, okay.
Somebody still on for me, please.
Can you pop over and get Tony? Or Sue, because it's handy.
Mickey, can we have the pomegranates in?
Yeah.
Do we have the Polaroids of the pomegranates as opened on here?
I was here?
That's the end of you there, look, just
Oh
the
yes,
tip
I
there.
see, right.
So the knife has got to be on your side, and ideally the two halves fairly together. Well, it doesn't have to be absolutely exact, but I mean as near as you can make
The
it.
knife was that way.
Let's go with this one.
Do you want me to
Do you mean there's all tumble down the end of
Yeah. Because from that angle we don't see that, it doesn't matter too much. It's just that I want to try and approximate that. Let me forget that bit.
Yeah.
Can I shorten this for Janet so it isn't so...
It's easier if I don't have that thing at the end. The telling of the story, I was telling as if to a child, and that's what you want.
Are you going to use Hades and Pluto?
Hades first time. Pluto second. Yeah?
What's that?
He seems to be looking that way, that one, and that way, the other.
Yes, but that's because one is taken from the front, one is taken from the back, isn't it?
That's the edge of that hand there as well. Right, okay.
So here's not fine.
Oops, sorry. I could use this.
My turn in the barrel now, right?
Your foot was more over the edge, more of this leading corner, wasn't it? Marie, can we check that again, please? Is that right? And is the position of the shoe critical in the Polaroid as well? Yes, that's fine. And Mickey, again, the shoes have been creeping out. Can you push them back in again?
Marie, can we check? Uncovered.
Uncovered?
That's yes.
Those shoes keep getting hit by
Okay.
what's happened with the others?
So in other words, if she goes by and hits them, they're going to be wrong for the match on them. Really?
If they come out and they disappear,
Take them
we
out.
can put them. Well, we can put them back in that position again afterwards.
Fertile enough, Mrs. Talent, to engender felicitous illusions, if not their own offspring.
And of course, there are more.
More of what, madam?
Mr. Neville, we all know your delight in the visual conceit. The juice of the pomegranate may be taken for blood, and in particular the blood of the newborn and of murder.
Okay, we've got there. Two problems. When Janet has the pomegranate up in front of her face, from that angle we see the pomegranate is right in front of her face. So we'll either have to drop just drop it slightly so we can see
Or
it
move
clearly.
it to the right.
Or move it to the right or to the left. Have we got a cloth for Janet?
You were watching with bated breath.
I was about to leap in.
I know.
What I'd also like to do, Curtis, is... Sorry, we'll pick this up in close-up as well. It's so dramatic, this bit here.
There.
Yeah. Okay, right, we'll make sure that works. Yeah.
See the one? But you didn't see it actually running on the one.
You know when you're facing that way and she's telling you the story?
Yes.
We have your back of the head over and over and over again. Can you somehow contrive to give us a bit more three-quarter view?
I'll try, yeah.
It's very sticky.
Although the centre of interest is essentially on her, but it would be nice to see somebody.
Yeah, what would be a good moment to do that, do you think?
Yeah, well, Goddess of Fields, of Gardens, of Orchards is distraught, heartbroken. Then there's a pause, slight change of emphasis. She sulks. Maybe look there. She refuses. As she looks round the room briefly, can you follow that? It's just to animate the head a bit, otherwise it's just static. All we see is just greasy black hair all the time. What are we going to do about that line as well, Janet, the double well?
Have served us
Oh.
well.
With that pause in, it makes a lot more rhythmic sense.
Picking up the shoe, you see?
Yes, that's fine.
Jenny, first of all, can you tell me what attracted you to this particular film?
Peter Greenaway, quite simply. I had received this enormous script. It was the biggest script I'd ever seen in my life. I mean, like, that thick. And I was asked to read it, and I couldn't actually... I was going to say I couldn't put it down. I could. I had to put it down. I couldn't pick it up. But I couldn't stop turning the pages.
We had a very long casting session, and a lot of people saw the script. And I think that the reasons, I would like to be, I hope I'm right in this, that these experienced actors took part were basically due to the enthusiasm that they felt for the script.
His father is a tenant farmer. That means he comes from, obviously, a lower background than the people whose houses he draws. And because he's supposedly very good at his job, he's become successful and very much in demand. When the events of this film take place, he's on his way to start a commission at a stately home in another part of the country, and is just stopping off for a night or something, and is persuaded by the two ladies of the house to draw 12 pictures of their house, which he doesn't want to do because he's got plenty of work and the house doesn't interest him very much. And as a joke, he names an outrageous price for doing each picture, and the right to have a sexual liaison with the lady of the house each time he does a picture, as a gag. And of course she calls his bluff and says okay, and he can't really back down because he looks silly, and that's how he becomes involved in this. This is more or less the first time that I've worked with actors, certainly this number of actors. I was a little anxious about it, a little apprehensive, but I'm very pleased to say that I think the whole thing went down extremely well. The actors certainly helped me. They put an awful lot of enthusiasm and interest into the parts, for which I'm very grateful, and I think it was really going to show in the final movie.
Peter does talk in rather more painterly and intellectual terms to actors than probably they're used to.
Yeah, I mean, I think he was not worried, but he was obviously slightly apprehensive about working with actors, but he's taken to it like a duck to water. He's terrific. And he knows what he wants and knows what he doesn't want. When the actors were first auditioned, we as a production team were very keen to lay down the idea that we would cast and crew work in a totally ensemble situation on location. And I was very keen that they should throw in their contributions as well, with all their craft, experience and knowledge. We had very, very little rehearsal time, and that was relevant to me because I was very keen to make very long, sustained takes and wasn't going to make a very over-edited film with lots of reverses and cutaways. So that demanded strong theatrical backgrounds from a lot of the people to be able to sustain the action over a long period.
I first of all like the fact that it's a very, very small crew. So you So everybody works very hard and very intensely. I liked very much also that we all get the same amount of money. So people are much more prepared to do more things. I think being in the same boat is a very important factor in people's concentration and the kind of commitment they give to a film. This is the first of, I think, 4 feature films that the BFI are now doing. And the atmosphere is particularly personal. On most movies you do, everything's very departmentalised. Nobody will pick up anybody else's bit of clobber. You know, they just won't do it.
For instance, the makeup people don't feel that that's all they do. They make suggestions about things. The same way that lighting people do costume people. And it works very well. Obviously, we've got somebody at the helm, Peter, who makes the decisions. But it's just a good way of working. People give more because they feel part of the whole thing.
I described the film more or less, when I first read it, as a sort of post-restoration whodunit, a kind of costumed Agatha Christie. And in a sense it does have that sort of mystery about it. There are clues dropped, like handkerchiefs, throughout the film, and like a very good detective story writer, you either pick them up or you don't. It's up to you.